Okay. Hello. How are you? Happy Monday evening. This is Linda Downey, and this is an episode of the Unconditioned Life Podcast. And this is streaming live in multiple places. So, welcome. If you hop on later at some point, please say hello. If you watch the replay later, please say hello. I'd love to get back to your comments. And if you have any questions, please ask them. So again, my name is Linda Downey. And if you've been following me on Facebook or social media, you know who I am and what I'm about. But if not, if you're just coming across this for the first time, I am a transformational health and whole life coach, working primarily with women in the areas of stress and overwhelm and burnout and overcoming painful things, relationships, whatever it is, so that they can go on and create a life that they love. And I wanted to talk tonight about not super long conversation, but a little bit more in depth on a topic that I did recently in a shorter morning conversation. So I just did one of my morning chats on being attached to the things that are killing us. And I got a lot of response about that. A lot of people have commented, a lot of people have said, absolutely, like this made so much sense. So I thought it was worth a longer conversation than just that, and really kind of looking at the pieces. So if you were thinking, yeah, this makes sense to me, then as we look into why, like the pieces that are in the background about it, see if you can identify for yourself which of those things resonate. And it might be more than one. But the conversation really started off with an analogy around adult male deer. When they fight, they lock horns, and they might lock horns to the point where they die. And in fact, I had just seen, which is why I thought of this analogy, I had just seen a video recently where one of the male deers did die, and the two were still locked together. And the other one would have died because he couldn't get himself unlocked. Some people came, helped him disengage. He was exhausted. He had no energy left. He was clearly, really struggling. And as soon as he was able to, instead of running away and being happy in his life, he went back and he started to fight with the dead deer that he had just been locked with, to the point of exhaustion and near death himself. And so I use that analogy to show how we as humans will oftentimes keep circling back and keep repeating patterns and cycles and things in our lives, even when they are exhausting us, even when it's the thing that's killing us. And so why do we do that? Why does that happen? I'd like to think, I know for sure, that we have a bigger brain than a deer, right? We actually have a lot more going on and can think about things and recognize things. And yet it seems like there's this automatic drive, let's say that drive to go back and do that. So because of the responses that I got to that little morning chat, I thought, let's look at what's behind that drive. So it's a couple of things. And as I pointed out in that first chat, it's really being attached to our stories about ourselves and our lives. But there's also some other things that are a little bit deeper or different than that are going on. So when I say attached to our stories, if this is resonating with you, if you're like, I know what you mean when you say story, great, let me know. Some people are like, what do you mean my story? And so it can be sort of multifaceted. Your story could be the story of your life, like you came from, an immigrant family, or you lost your mom when you were young, or your parents were divorced, or whatever is the story of your life. So there's that story that then we see as driving the circumstances of our life. Like, well, I came from this type of family, and this is what we know, and this is what we do, and so I keep doing that. So there's that level of story. So people get very attached to their story and seeing their life as only a continuation of that and the things that have already happened. Okay, that's one story. The second story that we could call a story, but is actually somewhat different, is the story that we have in our head about our life. So it's a little bit different than the actual circumstances. It's the story in our head. So it might be, and they're related for sure, they're connected, but because of your life circumstances that you've had, you create a story or an interpretation of yourself. And that interpretation will drive you to keep going back and making the same choices, the same behaviors, even though you're frustrated, even though you feel like, the things that you do keep not working, you keep feeling like your relationships, it's been several and they don't last, or it's the same kind of relationship. So it could be the story or the interpretation that you have about yourself. And that could look like, let me make one up. That could look like in relationships, the woman is the one, since I'm a woman, I'll just say that. I'm the one that has to work really hard. If you're a man, it might be in relationships, I have to be the one who provides everything and has all the answers. It might be a different interpretation, like of yourself. Who I need to be to make everybody else happy is I need to not rock the boat. I need to keep quiet and not rock the boat. And so if that's your interpretation of yourself, you're going to find yourself in relationships with people who don't want you to rock the boat, who aren't open to really hearing, or they keep asking you, I want to know what you think. I want to know how you feel about this. And you've sort of practiced not sharing that. So then relationships kind of keep going down that same path. All right, so that's the second kind of story. The first one, if you're joining in late, hi Sergio from Mexico. It's afternoon in Mexico. Yeah, I guess it is. It's a little bit after 7 p.m. here. So the first story is the actual circumstances of your life that you see yourself boxed into those circumstances. The second story is how you interpret yourself and your life. Sometimes as a result of those circumstances, sometimes because of other reasons, like maybe something happened to you and then you made a decision about yourself, and then you keep going back in your patterns, okay? So the stories are two of the reasons why people would act like that deer and go back, even when they have a way out, even when they start to pull away, they start to have some success. It might be in their health, like their fitness level, right? They start to make some progress and then boom, they find themselves like all of a sudden, they let everything go and they're back into a not great state of health or whatever it is. A third piece that might be going on for you is your nervous system. The nervous system is really the thing that drives us in the background. It's in charge of all the systems of our body. So it starts with the brain and then all of the nerves, your neural pathways, how you think, but it's also how you feel like in your body. What are the things that make you feel safe? So safe, good, familiar, those things, sometimes safe and good are not the same, right? Sometimes it might be, this makes me feel safe, even though I'm unhappy with it. So let me give you an example of that. You might have a nervous system that because of your childhood, your nervous system feels really safe when you don't get too connected to people. You like some distance. Well, you don't like it up here, but your nervous system feels safe. Like as soon as this relationship gets a little closer, starts to feel more vulnerable, I pull away because it feels safer to me to have some distance like that. And that could be because when you were growing up, that's how it was in your house. That's how people were that you saw. And so your nervous system kind of got programmed that way. And I use the word program because what I want you to know is it's not a hard wiring. It's not like you are this thing, which would be like the hardware of you, if I could compare it to a computer, right? It's more like a software problem, like a programming issue or a virus that gets downloaded onto the computer. Once we figure out what it is, what software is running that's having you always create distance, even though you want to be really close, but you don't let yourself. Another example of that might be a nervous system that feels really safe and being independent. And when I say independent, I mean, I'm good, I don't need anybody. Even convincing yourself that you don't really want a relationship. And here's why I say that. Human beings are wired for relationship. We actually are created to connect. We're social beings. We want to connect. So I always get suspicious when people say, no, I'm really good. I'm happy, been there, done that. I don't need another relationship. I don't want that. I'm good on my own. That makes me a little bit suspicious because I believe it's really just something they're telling themselves to justify why they're keeping that independence. Because really, in our heart of hearts, we want connection. We want to feel like we matter to someone very much. We want to have someone matter to us. We want to share our life. Certainly there's a spectrum of that. Not everybody's the same. I'm not saying that. But who we are as human beings, our nature is to connect. So when I see independence, I like to look at what's that person's background like, what's their nervous system like, because their nervous system feels safer that way. Just like creating the distance, right? Being independent, they're pretty similar. It could be a nervous system that feels really safe, being very clingy, right? I need to know where you are. I need to have 5 texts a day from you. I need to have you call me. I need us to do things together a lot. That kind of nervous system, I would say, which is anxious, right? Maybe up here. Oh, hi. Jessica saying, hi, thank you. You made a lot of sense. Okay, great. Awesome. That was my goal, Jessica, to make some sense of that so that people could look at, where do I want to go to work? And they're often connected, your story and your nervous system. But sometimes we can go to work on the story and we can shift everything. Sometimes we can go to work on the nervous system and the story just changes as we work on the nervous system. So, what was I saying? I was saying, something like if you're super anxious and your nervous system needs to feel that connection all the time, feels safe only really with connection. And so then that person has difficulty doing things on their own, struggles with codependence, like that. So, and then maybe people break up with them because they're too clinging and needy. So back to the analogy of the deer, if you find yourself like you've started to pull away, you've started to go in a particular direction, and whoop, the same issue keeps showing up, you find yourself right back there. Look at all of those things. Another thing is, and this is related to story, we create identities about ourselves. So if you have an identity of, okay, I'll use my life as an example. So if you've been following me for a while, you probably know that I have a daughter who passed away several years ago now. And that event of my life, I could create the identity of, I'm a mother who lost a child, as like my identity. And then if that identity, remember, like, think of how you would define identity. It's the thing that shapes you. It's like the viewpoint that you live your life from. It's the context that you create your life from. So then forevermore, I would be a wounded woman who lost a child if I let that event become my identity. Instead, I can let that event be one of the many events that are going to shape me throughout my lifetime, one of the many events that are going to challenge me and cause me to get on my knees and figure out how to get back up again, but I don't have to own it as my identity. So when people have an identity about something in their life, maybe somebody cheated on them, And so they make their identity be, I am a person who was betrayed. And that becomes part of who they are. It's in everything, in the context or the filter that they see their life through. It's going to be very difficult to give that up because it's become your identity. If your identity is I'm a helper and what I do is help everybody, or I'm a martyr, I'm the one who gets everything done, I'm the one who handles things for everybody, and that's become your identity, you're not going to want to give that up. So you would be like the deer finding your way back to those antlers that are going to have you stuck again, even though when you're a martyr, you feel resentful, you feel exhausted, excuse me, because you're doing everything like that. So in looking at this issue in your life, you're going to look at what are the circumstances of my life story? What are the interpretations and stories that I've created about myself? What is my identity? How do I see myself and where I fit into the world? What is my nervous system most comfortable with? Where do I feel safe? Even if I'm not happy consciously, even if I am wishing it's a different way, but that's where my nervous system feels safe. Okay? So those are several places that you could look. And again, you might have more than one. This podcast is called The Unconditioned Life because it's all about releasing the conditioning that we've grown through, grown into from the conditioning of our life experiences, the conditioning of our messaging, the conditioning of our stories. And when we release that, when we become unconditioned, then there's a whole new possibility. It's like this blank slate. It's like a clean whiteboard that you can actually go and create what your life, what you want it to be, because it's not conditioned from all of those things. Those are the things that are running you. That's why you go back like the deer and fight with the dead deer, even if it almost kills you, right? So we want to release that conditioning. That's the work that I do with my clients. If you're new to me, you may not know that. And as a transformational health and whole life coach, that is the work that I do. I work primarily with women, but also with men one-on-one. I work with women more in small groups. So if you're like, I can see those patterns, it takes rewiring. There's a lot of neural pathway rewiring that we do. That's the software of, the virus or the software programming is rewiring. We do a lot on getting in touch with your nervous system, figuring out what your triggers are, and then reconditioning that. And we have to release a lot of stuff that gets stayed and stored in the body because we have memories at a cellular level of all of the things that have happened to us. And that can come into our conditioning as well. So if you're interested in any of that, I would love to talk with you. Absolutely put a comment here if you watch the replay later. Sometimes I don't see the comments. I think Facebook does a good job on letting me know, and I do go back and check, but you can always DM me as well. If you've left a comment and I didn't get back to you, send me a direct message. Because from my point of view, you only get one time around. This is it. So this is not a do-over. This is not a dress rehearsal, right? If it's not going the way you want and you want to work on that rewiring and that reconditioning, I'd be happy to have a free conversation with you. Okay. So thanks for listening. I'll see you in the morning on this week, some morning chats, and also drop me a comment about anything that you want to have a conversation about in the lives or in the morning chats, because I pick topics that I think are important or that I think will make a difference for you, but maybe there's something I haven't thought of that you would like me to talk about. Okay? Okay, great. Have a great rest of your evening or afternoon, wherever you are. And thanks again so much for saying hello and for watching. Have a good night.